You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Joining us now to continue our discussion about the Department of Child and Family Services and the change in leadership that will be coming is House Republican Tom Weber. Thank you so much for joining us, Representative.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. This is a discussion that needs to happen.
So I want to start here just with your immediate reaction. Mark Smith, he's been on the job now 4 years, and now at the end of this year, he announces he's going to be resigning. What did you think about the way that, the announcement itself, the way it was brought out, and what do you think this means for the department going forward?
So, first of all, I think it's long overdue. I think the Inspector General report that came out and identified 21 items that was identified as failures in the past, and that today that those have not been addressed yet. I mean, I think that probably spurred the announcement. So I think it's long overdue, but at the same time, I think we need to work together to find a replacement. I know this will be the governor's appointment. But we have a system in the state of Illinois that is failing, has failed, thousands of children. I would try looking outside of state systems, children's services that work, and bring someone from the outside with fresh views and someone that is willing to do the hard things, because maybe there needs to be new management in other places as well.
I wonder what. There's been a lot of conversations now. I heard from House Republican leader Tony McCombie about this particular issue, and just the idea that there's no better time to try to restructure than now. That was her sentiment, and beyond just the leadership. And I wonder where you stand on that, because this goes back much further than Mark Smith's tenure. This goes back much further than Governor Pritzker's administration. It goes back further than the Rauner administration, the struggles that have plagued DCFS now for years. And is it time, do you believe that it's time to strip down DCFS and build back up in a totally different way? Or can these fixes be made internally as it is?
Personally, no. I think that we have lots of bills to address problems. Unfortunately, most of them have been ignored. But those are just Band-Aids on a bigger problem. I think I agree that fundamentally, I think the department needs to be restructured from the ground up. There are systemic and historic problems that continue to affect the way they operate. It's been happening for decades. I talked to Representative Bob Churchill. I don't know if you remember Bob, but and he said they were running into these same issues when he was a representative in the House. And it's one of those things. I think we just need to start looking at other places where it works. How can we restructure? It's going to be hard enough to bring a leader, a new director in, when you have a ship that's been sinking this long. And we need the most important, this is the most important job, in my opinion, in the state of Illinois, because our number one job is protecting children. And so, I think that Democrat, Republican, we need to work together, see if we can come up with ideas on how to rework this system from the ground up. We've been talking about this. I am on, I think, 3 different working groups, and we have ideas. Steve Reich, I think, came up with a pilot program for a county-ran DCFS office. And like I have said before, you have a state-run program that is not working together with local law enforcement, local state's attorney's office. Some places they do better than others. But in general, local law enforcement has a better grasp normally of what's happening within these households. And, if we have something there's more local involvement, maybe we can protect the life of hundreds of more children than we have in the past, not thousands.
I've talked with experts about Steve Reich's proposal, Representative Reich's proposal, about that local shift and localized strategy. And there's they say there's definitely some merit to that, but then you got to make sure those organizations are still structured right. What I found about your proposals pretty interesting that are pretty interesting is that you have this increase in local and statewide correspondence, and they're working together, but that's the goal of your policies. And you've had some pretty major events happen around DCFS. AJ Friend is from your district, was from your district. That case happened in your district. And how has that changed the way you view this particular agency? Because when we're dealing with children, the state is dealing with very sensitive information. And there's often that discussion of who gets to see that information and who doesn't. But there's also this element of, okay, when to step in, who gets to step in, how quickly do you do it? And that's this, your policies seem to approach that more, but again, you just called them a Band-Aid in that sense. Is that, I mean, or are you talking about different proposals, I guess?
No, I mean, a lot of different proposals. I mean, I think, the way, so my bill basically so if you read the current legislation, the way the laws are written for DCFS, is that if the person suspected of abuse is a family member, lives within the household, etc., which is often who it is, DCFS has sole jurisdiction. And if this were to happen, a case of abuse at, let's say, a babysitter's house, not within the family, not a relative, local law enforcement would be called out there along with DCFS, but it would be the state's attorney and law enforcement take that. So it's not that they don't do the job. It just happens to be the way the law was written. And that was changed probably within the last 10 years. That was not always that way. And the fact that forcing them to work together, I think, is a good idea, no matter which way we go with it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that's what I would call necessarily a Band-Aid bill. I think that's a good policy bill. When your goal is protecting children, we have, so there was a case close to me where a child was possibly injured at a babysitter's house. DCFS was at the parent's house. It is the first time they'd ever been there to investigate, and immediately implemented a safety plan where they could not be alone with their children. But also police were there interviewing, and both police and DCFS interviewing the babysitter's house. So to say that DCFS is the only people that do this job, it is not. And that was really where I ran into a lot of problems. So I worked together with the department. They were opposition to the bill, and then they went neutral. There were other organizations that were opposed to my bill. We worked out added language 3 different times, I think, and they went neutral. I think the last time it was in committee, before it was called for a vote, AFSCME, who represents the caseworkers, came in as opposition. And, between you and me, when you have someone else take a second look, that's oversight. And people don't want it. And, AFSCME represents the caseworkers, and if there was something found, it would probably make them look bad. But at the end of the day, I don't care about that. I care about protecting children. And if this is a way we can save more lives, then this is what we have to do.
Being that you're in the House of Representatives, you're not going to, be one of the Senate members voting on the confirmation of the next head of the department. But as this whole process plays out, if this turns into just another agency head appointment process where it's the one person, they're giving their plan, and it turns into almost a job interview in that sense, and we're not talking about much larger systemic overhauls of how DCFS works, how would you feel about that process if the finding of the next agency head is just that, and there's not much larger conversations happening around it?
I think politics plays a lot into what we do, unfortunately, in the state of Illinois. So to me, it would be disappointing, to see, something that looks like a political appointment over this is the best person for the job. So we don't know who that person is. And that's kind of why I said it, we've had such a broken system in the state of Illinois. Finding someone that's already within that system, I'm not sure is the answer. And that's why I would be looking probably outside of the state of Illinois, possibly to some people who have been in systems that are working better than we are. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how that process. But I'd like to see Democrats and Republicans working together, possibly vetting candidates, and it's going to be difficult. Again, if we're not going to be serious about a restructuring and fixing the systemic problems that have been identified time and time again, no one's going to want that job.
Can a new director on their own make the necessary changes, do you feel, or does this need to be a much bigger seismic change?
I think it needs to be a mission of the state of Illinois to restructure DCFS for the sole purpose of protecting the children of the state of Illinois. That is how I feel. And if there's anything short of that, I think we're doing a disservice to taxpayers in the state of Illinois.
Got it. Well, Representative Weber, thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to improving our system here in the state of Illinois. Thanks.
When we come back, we're joined by a member of the Anti-Defamation League to talk about their latest report showing anti-Semitism and extremism is on the rise in Illinois. We'll be right back.